My husband walked out of our therapist's office without raising his voice after I asked a question we both already knew the answer to, and that single quiet exit destroyed everything I had spent 6 years building and calling home. I remember the exact second my life split into before and after. Not the day I found out. Not the night she cried on the bathroom floor. It was a Tuesday afternoon in a beige office with a fake plant in the corner and a white noise machine outside the door, and my wife of 6 years looked at our therapist, not at me, and said, hypothetically, if I had done something serious, do you think a person can be forgiven for it? And Dr. Rena paused. That pause lasted maybe 3 seconds. It felt like a building collapsing floor by floor, slowly, each level giving out before the next one could catch it. I sat there in that gray chair with my hands on my knees, and I felt every single thing inside me go completely still. Not quiet. Still. Like a power outage. Like everything that made me a functioning person just cut off at the source. She still wasn't looking at me. That was the part that broke something I don't think ever healed. She looked at the therapist. She looked at the fake plant. She looked at her own hands. She did not look at me. Because she already knew. She had already done the thing. The hypothetical wasn't hypothetical. And some part of me, the part that had been ignoring strange receipts and late nights and a new password on her phone, knew it too. I just hadn't let myself say it out loud yet. That Tuesday, I didn't have a choice anymore. Let me back up, because you need to understand what we were before that room. Marcus and I met when I was 26. I was working a corporate job I hated, living in an apartment that felt too big for one person, and he walked into a mutual friend's birthday dinner and sat across from me and spent 3 hours asking me questions like he was genuinely collecting my answers, storing them somewhere careful. He remembered everything. He remembered I mentioned my grandmother's name once, in passing, and 6 months later he used it in a toast. That was Marcus. The kind of man who paid attention like it was a full-time job. We dated for 2 years, got engaged, got married in a backyard ceremony with string lights and his mother crying in the front row. We bought a house. We had a daughter, Priya, who was 4 by the time I walked into that therapist's office and detonated our life. We had a son on the way. I was 5 months pregnant when I sat in that beige chair and watched my wife ask the question that ended everything. I have to say that again so it lands. I was 5 months pregnant. The affair had started 8 months before that session. 8 months. Which means I was already seeing him when Marcus and I found out we were expecting. Which means I stood in our bathroom with a positive pregnancy test and cried and let Marcus hold me and whisper that we were going to be okay, and I was already sleeping with someone else. I let him believe those were happy tears. Some of them were. That's the part I can't explain without hating myself completely. His name was Derek. He worked in my industry, adjacent enough that we crossed paths at conferences and on calls, far enough that Marcus had never met him. Derek was charming in the way that only men who have practiced being charming ever are. He said the right things. He made me feel like I was the most interesting woman in any room. He asked about my ambitions and listened and pushed back in ways that felt like intellectual respect, and I confused that for connection. I told myself Marcus and I had gotten too comfortable. I told myself I had changed and Marcus hadn't noticed. I told myself that feeling seen by someone new meant something real. It meant nothing. I know that now. I paid a price for learning it that I will spend the rest of my life paying. The outside noise didn't help. My friends, 2 of them in particular, had this running narrative that domesticity was the death of a woman's identity. They talked about settling like it was a terminal diagnosis. One of them was on her 2nd divorce and called it freedom. I sat in those brunches and absorbed that language and let it mix with my own restlessness and told myself that wanting more wasn't the same as being ungrateful. I was wrong. Wanting more the way I wanted it, by reaching outside instead of inward, wasn't ambition. It was arson. Social media didn't help either. I'm not blaming an app. I'm saying I used it like a measuring stick and my life kept coming up short against curated versions of other people's best moments. I watched women my age post about passion and adventure, and I looked at my good, steady, loving husband putting our daughter to bed, and I thought, is this it? I thought that. About Marcus. About the man who had never once made me feel small. I thought, is this it? That thought is the one I'd take back before any other. Derek and I started with messages. Long ones. Late at night when Marcus was asleep. I told myself it was conversation. I told myself nothing physical had happened, so I wasn't doing anything wrong. That's the lie I lived inside for about 6 weeks before it became physical, and then I just built a bigger lie to live inside instead. I was good at it. That's the worst part, how good I was at it. I compartmentalized in a way that scares me now when I look back. I would hang up with Derek and walk downstairs and help Priya with her dinner and kiss Marcus on the cheek and feel almost nothing. Almost. The red flags about Derek were everywhere. He had been married before. Briefly. He didn't talk about his ex-wife with cruelty, he talked about her with indifference, which is worse. He never once suggested he wanted anything lasting with me. Looking back, every single thing he said was designed to keep me available without making any promises. I ignored all of it because it felt good and feeling good felt like a reason. I also ignored what it was doing to Priya. She was 4. 4-year-olds feel everything and name nothing. She started waking up at night more. She started clinging to Marcus at drop-off in a way that broke his heart and that I watched from a distance because I was distracted, because I was elsewhere even when I was standing right in front of her. I told myself she was just going through a phase. I told myself kids are resilient. I told myself a lot of things that let me keep doing what I was doing without having to feel the full weight of it. The weight was always there. I just kept refusing to pick it up. Marcus noticed something was off before I confessed anything. He noticed the way a man notices when the woman he loves has started treating him like furniture. Not with fights. Not with accusations. He got quieter. He started asking if I was okay with this careful, gentle worry in his voice that gutted me every single time because it was so undeserved. He was trying to reach me. I was stepping back every time he reached. He suggested therapy. I said yes because I thought I could manage it. I thought I could sit in that room and steer the conversation toward our communication issues and our different visions for the future and keep the real thing buried. I thought I was in control of the narrative. I was not in control of anything. 3 sessions in, something cracked in me. I don't know if it was the therapist's questions or the way Marcus answered them, with complete honesty, with genuine love, or if I was just exhausted from carrying something that heavy for that long. Something gave way. And instead of confessing directly, instead of looking at my husband and telling him the truth like he deserved, I went sideways. I asked a question dressed up as hypothetical. I looked at Dr. Rena and I said, if someone had done something, do you think forgiveness is possible? The room went silent. Dr. Rena looked at me for a long moment. Then she looked at Marcus. And Marcus, my husband, the father of my children, the man who had spent 6 years loving me like I was something worth protecting, turned his head slowly and looked at me. Not with anger. Not yet. With recognition. Like something he had suspected but refused to believe had just walked into the room and sat down between us. He said, very quietly, Jana. Just my name. That's all. I couldn't speak. I nodded. One small nod. And I watched something leave his face that I have never seen come back. Not in the months that followed. Not in the court documents. Not in the parking lot of Priya's school when we do handoffs and he looks just past me like I'm a stranger he's learned to tolerate. He stood up. He picked up his jacket from the back of the chair. He thanked Dr. Rena. He walked out. No slamming door. No raised voice. He just left. And I sat in that beige office with my hands on my 5-month stomach and the fake plant in the corner and the white noise machine outside, and I understood for the first time what I had actually done. Not lost. Destroyed. There's a difference. Lost things can sometimes be found. Destroyed things are just wreckage you have to learn to live near. He didn't come home that night. He didn't come home that night, and he sent a single text at 11 p.m. that said, Priya is with my mother. Don't call me. That was it. No capital letters, no punctuation drama, nothing. Just a closed door made of 12 words. I sat on the kitchen floor of the house we had picked out together and I didn't cry for a long time. I just sat there with my back against the cabinet where we kept the good dishes we only used for guests, and I thought about all the ordinary moments I had walked through without appreciating a single one of them. The Tuesday nights watching bad TV. The grocery runs where he always remembered I hated cilantro. The way he would put his hand on the small of my back when we walked into rooms full of people, not possessively, just like a quiet signal that said I'm here, I see you, we're together. I had treated that like wallpaper. And now the walls were gone. Derek stopped responding to my messages within 48 hours of everything falling apart. Not a conversation. Not a this is complicated talk. Just nothing. Read receipts and then not even that. I had burned my marriage down for a man who, when the situation required anything more than secrecy and stolen afternoons, simply ceased to exist. I'm not going to call him a coward because the truth is I never asked him to be anything more than what he showed me he was from the very beginning. That's on me. That calculation, that willingness to accept so little because it felt like so much, that's one of the things I'll be interrogating for the rest of my life. The next few weeks are something I can only describe as watching yourself from outside your own body. Marcus hired a lawyer within 10 days. I didn't know he had already been talking to one. That's how I know, on some level, he had suspected for a while and had been quietly preparing instead of confronting me, because that is who Marcus is. He protects himself the same way he protects the people he loves, carefully, without drama, completely. The divorce papers came fast. He didn't fight about the house, he let me keep it, but he fought hard for Priya. He had documentation I didn't even know existed. A timeline his lawyer had helped him build from phone records and patterns he had noticed and kept track of without telling me. I sat across from my own attorney and listened to that timeline read back to me, and I heard my life translated into evidence, and I thought, he knew. He knew for months. And he stayed kind. That detail, that piece of information, is something I return to on my worst nights, and it is not comforting. It is devastating. I got limited custody. Every other weekend and Wednesday evenings. For a child who used to climb into my bed at 6 a.m. and press her small forehead against my cheek. Every other weekend. I signed that agreement and walked out of the building and sat in my car for 40 minutes without starting it. The baby, my son, Arjun, was born into this. He came into the world with his parents already legally separated. Marcus was there at the hospital because he is the kind of man who shows up even when he has every reason not to, but he sat in the chair by the window and there was a distance between us that no amount of physical proximity could close. He held Arjun. He cried. And I lay in that hospital bed and understood that the family I had set on fire was being tended by the man I had wronged, because he loved these children more than he hated me. He has never once told Priya anything negative about me. She told me that herself, in one of our Wednesday evenings, when she was sitting at my kitchen table doing homework. She said, "Daddy says I should always be nice to you." She said it in a flat, reporting voice. She wasn't trying to hurt me. She was just telling me a thing that was true. But I sat across from my 5-year-old daughter and heard those words and understood that Marcus's kindness toward me in front of the children was simultaneously the most generous and the most wrecking thing he could have done. Because she doesn't look at me the way she used to. She loves me, I believe that, but there's a watchfulness in her now that wasn't there before. A distance she doesn't have words for yet. Children know when the ground shifted. They just don't always know why. My friends, the ones who had sat at those brunches and talked about settling and freedom and women not making themselves small, almost universally disappeared. One of them, the one who had romanticized her own divorces the most loudly, sent me a voice note that lasted 4 minutes and contained some of the most honest and brutal words anyone has ever said to me. She said I had taken something real and traded it for something that was never real, and that watching me do it had made her look at her own choices in ways she wasn't comfortable with. She said she couldn't be around me right now. She said she was sorry. She hung up. I listened to that voice note 6 times and I saved it. Not as punishment. As documentation of the truth. She wasn't wrong about a single word. At work, I held it together for about 3 months before the holding together collapsed. I missed deadlines. I showed up to meetings underprepared. My manager, who had always liked me, started checking in with a frequency that was gentle but unmistakable. I was treading water in a job that had once felt like solid ground, and slowly I stopped treading efficiently. I took a leave of absence that was framed as maternity leave but was really just me running out of the ability to perform normalcy. I came back and lasted 4 months before I resigned because I couldn't afford to be fired. I freelance now. Enough to pay bills. Not enough to feel stable. Not enough to feel like I'm building anything. I had to sell the house. The mortgage without 2 incomes was something I could manage for a while and then couldn't. I moved into a 2-bedroom apartment that Priya visits on alternating weekends and where Arjun has a crib next to my bed because the 2nd bedroom is hers. The apartment is fine. It's clean. It has good light in the mornings. I keep it nice because I want the children to feel comfortable in it. But it is a life that has been significantly reduced from the one I was living, and every reduction is a consequence with a clear origin point, and the origin point is me. Marcus has moved on in the way that people move on when they were never the one who broke the trust. He's not dating anyone, as far as I know, but he is present in a way I can see even from our careful, minimal interactions. He coaches Priya's Saturday soccer. He takes Arjun to a parent and baby music class on Thursdays. He has dinner at his mother's on Sundays, and his mother, who once called me her second daughter and taught me how to make 3 of her recipes from scratch, no longer speaks to me directly. She is civil at pickups. That's all. I tried to write Marcus a letter once. 4 months after the divorce was finalized. I wrote and rewrote it for 2 weeks. I was trying to explain something, not excuse it, explain it. I wanted him to understand what was happening inside me in those months, not so that he would forgive me, but just so that the story he carried wasn't one-dimensional. I wanted him to know I had never stopped loving him, even when I was acting in ways that made that statement seem impossible. I wanted him to know that Priya's laugh sounds like his and that I notice it every time and that it wrecks me with love and grief simultaneously. I never sent it. Because I realized, sitting with it in my hands, that the letter was for me. It was another form of me managing the narrative. He didn't know me understanding. He didn't know me the emotional labor of reading my explanation and processing my feelings about what I did to him. He had done enough. He had shown up at my hospital bed. He had spoken kindly of me to our daughter. He had taken our son to music class and our daughter to soccer, and he had rebuilt a life with the pieces I left him while I sat in a 2-bedroom apartment figuring out how to rebuild mine. He had done more than enough. I deleted the letter. There is a particular loneliness in this situation that I wasn't prepared for. It's not just being single. It's being alone in a very specific way, the way that comes from being the one who caused the damage. You can't quite sit with other single mothers and share the clean solidarity of a hard situation because your situation isn't clean. You can't quite tell the full story at a dinner table because the full story doesn't make you sympathetic. You carry it in a way that keeps you at arm's length from genuine comfort, because genuine comfort requires honesty, and honesty about what I did is not a shortcut to connection. Most people, when they hear the real version, go quiet. Or they try to find extenuating circumstances I don't want to give them because the truth is the circumstances weren't extenuating enough. I think about the therapist's office all the time. That beige room? The fake plant? The white noise machine? I think about the 3 seconds of silence after I asked my question. I think about what might have happened if I had found a different way. If I had walked into that room and said, "I've been having an affair and I don't know if I want to stop, but I'm here because part of me knows it has to stop." I don't know if Marcus would have stayed. I don't know if I would have deserved it if he had. But I know that the roundabout way I chose, the hypothetical, the question that wasn't a question, was one final act of cowardice in a long sequence of them, and it took away even the small dignity of a direct confession. I'm not looking for absolution. That's not what this is. Priya came to my apartment last Wednesday and we made pasta together, and she talked the whole time about a girl at school who she wanted to be friends with and how she wasn't sure the girl liked her back, and I stood at the stove and listened to my daughter navigate the earliest form of the question of whether someone will choose you, and I thought, I know how that ends when the answer is no. I know exactly how that feels. And I thought, I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure she never has a reason to feel this way because of something I did. That's the only direction left. Forward. Smaller. More careful. Quieter. Marcus chose us, once, completely and without hesitation. I treated that choice like a default, like gravity, like something that would just keep happening regardless of what I did. I found out what happens when a man who chose you decides, quietly, finally, that he is done choosing. You don't get to vote on that. You don't get a recount. You just live in the result. And the result looks like a 2-bedroom apartment with good morning light and a daughter who visits on alternating weekends and looks at you with eyes that loved you first and now love you more carefully, and a son who will grow up knowing his parents in 2 separate places, and a marriage that was real and good and mine to protect, and I didn't protect it. I had everything. I know that now the way you know the temperature of something only after you've let it go cold.